of the Capitol. Let us turn there for a moment. Republican Congressman Buddy Carter, a member of the delegation from Georgia. Congressman, thank you so much for your time this morning. I know that you spent a fair amount of time with Congressman Lewis there on the Hill over the last couple of decades. You've talked about walking to the House floor with him for votes. Tell us about those walks, what those conversations were like, what those moments meant to you.
Well, as you can imagine, it was quite an honor for me. I mean, here I was walking with someone who was part of history. And every opportunity I had to walk with him, I would do that. And I would hang on to every word that he said. And, you know, I used to joke with him because, as you can imagine, when we were walking outside toward the Capitol, people would want to get their picture taken with him. And I always ask him, you think they want their picture with you or with me? And he'd always laugh at that. But it was truly just an honor. Listen, in our lives, there are people and places we remember. And I will always remember John Lewis. And what a great American, what a giant among man.
Congressman, you and the late Congressman Lewis, you were on different sides of the aisle. You disagreed on a number of policy issues, as one would expect. What were the things about John Lewis that you will always respect, the things that you will always carry with you?
Well, he was so kind. He was so kind to me. He was so kind to all of us in the Georgia delegation. He was the leader of the Georgia delegation. We were so proud to have a member like John Lewis leading our delegation, and what a great opportunity it was for all of us to be there. I remember one time in particular that he invited us all to his home for dinner here in Washington, D.C. One of the most special experiences that I've ever had up here in Washington, no question about it, just to listen to him tell the stories that he told about preaching to the chickens when he was growing up in Alabama, about being with Dr. King and the stories that he told. Just great, great memories. What an honor for me to have been able to experience that.
What about the acrimony there in Washington? As you know, our nation's capital has unfortunately, it's become synonymous with gridlock and just vitriol being spewed. What did he ever say to you about the environment of Washington, D.C., the nastiness of modern politics?
Well, you know, it was interesting. I told you about the stories that he shared with us about Dr. King and how they were actually trained not to respond physically, but you know, it was civil disobedience. There's no question about that. Yes, we did talk about the acrimony, as you describe it, accurately, might I add. But we did talk about that, and he always was careful to point out that, you know, you got to rise above that. You got to stay focused, and you got to remember what the prize is. And not necessarily those words, but that was what I took from it. And I tell you, again, it was just an honor to have known John Lewis and an honor to have served with John Lewis.
As you probably are aware, Congressman Clyburn is going to offer some legislation later today to rename the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It would restore a key part of that act. The House has passed it. Congressman, do you think the Senate should take it up and pass it as well?
Well, certainly that'll be up to the Senate, and it'll be judged on the merits of the legislation. You know, I don't want us to get caught up in the politics of naming it after someone. You have to consider the legislation itself. I know that what we passed here in the House, it was on a very partisan vote, and I did vote against it. But at the same time, when we honor John Lewis, we need to remember that this is someone who set the greatest of examples. This is someone who gave of himself, and when we keep that in mind, I think we do the right thing, and I think we rise above all the other things that are noise outside of that.
Congressman Buddy Carter, member of the Georgia delegation. Congressman, thank you. Thanks for your time. Do appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.